John Smith was the wealthy CEO of Acme Corporation, a large manufacturing company he had founded 20 years ago. Last month, he made the difficult decision to sue one of his former employees, a man named Michael Johnson. John was certain that Michael had stolen valuable trade secrets from the company right before leaving to start a competing business. The accusation. In the lawsuit, John laid out a series of serious allegations against his former employee. He claimed Michael had downloaded confidential product designs, client lists, and financial documents in the days before resigning. John said it logs showed Michael accessing sensitive files he had no reason to view. The stolen information would give Michael an unfair advantage as he launched his new company. John had worked hard to build Acme into an industry leader and was confident the evidence would prove Michael's guilt in court. The ex-employee's defense. Michael was shocked when he was served with the lawsuit papers. While he had left Acme to start his own business in the same industry, he vehemently denied stealing anything from his former employer. Michael insisted he had built his new company using his own ideas, experience, and business relationships, not Acme's confidential data. He knew the odds were stacked against him but was determined to fight the false accusations and clear his name in court. The court proceedings begin. On the first day of the trial, the atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. John arrived with an entourage of high-powered attorneys, while Michael represented himself to save money. The CEO's lawyers called a string of witnesses to testify about Michael's alleged misconduct. Its staff, Michael's former co-workers, and forensic computer experts. With each witness, the case against Michael seemed to grow stronger. The ex-employee did his best to poke holes in their testimony during cross-examination, but it was clear the CEO had come well prepared. The judge's intervention. As the trial entered its second week, the judge grew increasingly skeptical of the narrative laid out by John's lawyers. To him, the CEO's case seemed a little too neat and tidy, with the witnesses providing testimony that perfectly supported John's story and nothing more. During a break in the proceedings, the judge decided to dig into the evidence himself. As he reviewed email records and computer logs submitted by the company, he uncovered a shocking discovery that turned the whole case on its head. The truth exposed. The judge's investigation revealed the truth behind the lawsuit. Buried in the email chains was proof that John had directed his staff to plant fake evidence on Michael's computer to frame him for data theft. Acme hadn't been hacked by Michael. They had hacked themselves and fabricated digital breadcrumbs to implicate him in a crime he didn't commit. The CEO was terrified that Michael would succeed with his new startup and was determined to crush his business before it got off the ground. In court the next day, the judge exposed John's scheme and the courtroom erupted in chaos. The verdict and aftermath. Given the explosive revelations, the judge quickly announced that he was dismissing the charges against Michael. He said the ex-employee had been framed by his former boss and that the CEO had abused the court system in an attempt to destroy an innocent man's life and livelihood. Michael wept with relief as the verdict was read, his reputation restored. For John, the decision was a devastating blow. He now faced the prospect of criminal charges for fabricating evidence, along with a countersuit from Michael for malicious prosecution. The once celebrated CEO had been undone by his own ego, arrogance, and dirty tricks. The case stood as a cautionary tale about the consequences of abusing power and twisting the truth for personal gain. News of the judge's ruling spread like wildfire. Media outlets that had previously portrayed Michael as a corporate spy now competed to tell the story of an innocent man wrongfully accused by his powerful former boss. The public was outraged by John's deception, and the company's stock price tumbled as investors fled. With Acme Corporation in turmoil and his personal reputation in tatters, John made a last-ditch effort at damage control. A public reckoning. At a hastily arranged press conference, John tried to spin the situation, claiming the fake evidence was planted by a rogue employee and that he had no knowledge of the scheme. But reporters confronted him with emails proving he had personally directed the conspiracy. As the CEO's lies unraveled in real time, he abruptly ended the press conference and fled the podium, his face etched with shame and defeat. Watching John's downfall on the evening news, Michael felt a sense of relief, but also disappointment that a man he once respected had sunk so low. Acme in crisis. In the following days and weeks, the consequences of John's misconduct rippled through Acme Corporation. Longtime clients cut ties, citing concerns about unethical leadership. Valued employees quit in protest. Industry partners canceled contracts. Government regulators launched investigations into the company's business practices. With Acme's very survival in doubt, the board of directors had no choice but to take drastic action. The CEO dethroned. 1 month after the verdict, Acme's board unanimously voted to terminate John Smith's employment. The once celebrated founder had become a liability and had to go. As John packed up his corner office, he finally began to grasp the magnitude of his mistake. By giving in to paranoia and arrogance, he had destroyed the company he loved and tarnished his own legacy. Watching the moving trucks haul away his belongings, John was a broken man filled with regret. Michael's second chance. As Ackman struggled to right the ship, Michael Johnson's new company was already making waves. Freed from the shadow of suspicion, he secured a major investment from a prominent Silicon Valley venture capital firm. At the funding announcement, Michael spoke about the importance of integrity, transparency, and playing by the rules, subtle digs at his former boss. As the startup hit its stride, Michael took pride in building a company on a foundation of honesty and hard work. Justice served. Federal prosecutors wasted no time building a criminal case against John and his co-conspirators at Ackman. Facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence if found guilty at trial, John pleaded guilty to charges including perjury, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. At his sentencing hearing, John gave a tearful apology, saying he was blinded by ego and would regret his misdeeds for the rest of his life. The judge imposed a 5-year prison sentence and ordered John to pay millions in restitution to Michael. It was a steep price, but one John knew he deserved. A new era. 5 years later, much had changed in the business world. Ackman Corporation had clawed its way back from the brink, with new leadership committed to ethics and accountability. The company became a case study in business schools, a cautionary tale about the dangers of executive misconduct. Meanwhile, Michael Johnson's startup had grown into a thriving enterprise. He never forgot the lessons of his legal ordeal. That success must be built on a bedrock of integrity. As he walked through his company's gleaming headquarters, Michael allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He had defeated his adversary not through deception, but through hard work and innovation. The best revenge, he realized, was living well. One sunny morning, Michael Johnson arrived at his office to find an unexpected visitor waiting in the lobby. It was none other than John Smith, his former boss and legal nemesis, recently released from prison. Gone was the cocky, imperious CEO. In his place sat a chastened man seeking redemption. John asked Michael for a chance to talk, to apologize in person for the pain he had caused. Michael was wary, but his curiosity won out. He led John to a private conference room. The apology. Over coffee, John poured out his heart. He spoke of his shame and regret, the soul-searching he had done behind bars. John realized that in trying to destroy Michael, he had only destroyed himself, his reputation, his company, his freedom. Prison had given him a long time to reflect on his mistakes. He apologized profusely for the lawsuit and the attempted frame job, acknowledging the deep harm he had inflicted. Michael listened intently, trying to gauge John's sincerity. A tentative truce. As the conversation continued, Michael began to see a glimmer of the man he once respected, the visionary leader who had built Ackman from scratch. He sensed that John's remorse was genuine. In a spirit of forgiveness, Michael offered his own perspective, sharing how the ordeal had affected him and his family. The two men talked for hours, gradually letting go of the anger and resentment that had consumed them both for so long. When they finally stood to leave, they shook hands, not quite as friends, but no longer as enemies. The offer. Just as Michael was about to head out, John surprised him with an offer. He wanted to make amends tangibly by investing in Michael's company. John saw the startup's incredible potential and believed that his money and connections could help take it to the next level. Michael was stunned. It was a generous proposal, but he couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt. Could he really trust the man who had once tried to ruin him? A difficult decision. Michael told John he would think it over. A decision this weighty couldn't be made lightly. Over the next several days, he agonized over the choice. On the one hand, John's investment could be transformative for his growing business, but would taking his money be seen as forgiveness for the past? As Michael wrestled with his dilemma, He sought advice from trusted mentors. In the end, he realized that this was a chance to chart a new path forward, not just for himself, but for John as well. The partnership. Michael called John and accepted the investment offer with some caveats. He insisted on clear boundaries, total transparency, and a legally binding ethical conduct clause. John readily agreed to the terms, eager to prove he had truly turned over a new leaf. At a joint press conference announcing the partnership, both men spoke about the power of second chances and the importance of doing business with integrity. Their unlikely alliance sent shockwaves through the industry, a story of redemption and reconciliation. Epilogue. 5 years later. Half a decade on, the partnership between Michael Johnson and John Smith was thriving. With John's investment in connections, Michael's company had grown into a global powerhouse. The two men had built a strong working relationship based on mutual respect and hard-earned trust. John had found a measure of redemption as a silent partner, using his business acumen to help others succeed. For Michael, the journey had been bittersweet, a testament to the power of forgiveness, but also a reminder of the scars that never fully fade. One evening, as Michael was packing up to leave the office, he paused to reflect on the improbable path that had led him here. From the depths of betrayal to the heights of success, it had been a wild ride. In the end, he realized life's greatest tests often come from the most unexpected places. His story was a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is always a chance for a new beginning. With a smile, he turned out the lights and headed home, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Just when Michael thought he had weathered the worst of the storms, a new challenge emerged on the horizon. A large multinational corporation, Envirotech, had entered the market with a competing product that threatened to undercut Michael's company. Envirotech had deep pockets and a ruthless reputation, known for crushing smaller rivals. Michael knew he was in for the fight of his life. Gathering the troops, Michael called an emergency meeting of his top executives, including John Smith. They pored over market research and brainstormed strategies late into the night. John suggested playing dirty, using some of the same underhanded tactics he had once employed against Michael. But Michael held firm. He refused to stoop to that level. They would compete fairly, even if it meant risking everything. The underdog. In the weeks that followed, Michael rallied his troops for an all-out effort. They worked around the clock, improving their product, reaching out to loyal customers, and telling their story to anyone who would listen. Envirotech fought back hard, slashing prices and poaching key clients. But Michael's team had something their giant rival lacked: heart. They believed in their company's mission and in each other. A secret weapon. Just when things looked bleakest, Michael got a call from an old friend, a brilliant engineer he had worked with years ago. She had developed a groundbreaking new technology that could revolutionize their industry, and she wanted Michael's company to have it. It was a game changer, a way to leapfrog the competition. Michael knew it was a risk, but it was one he had to take. Betting the farm. Michael and John met with the board to propose the acquisition of the new technology. It would require a huge investment, one that could bankrupt the company if it didn't pay off. The board was skeptical, but Michael poured out his heart, painting a vision of a better future. One by one, the board members came around. They voted to approve the deal, putting their faith in Michael's leadership. The final showdown. With the new technology in hand, Michael's company went on the offensive. They launched a revolutionary new product that left Envirotech's offering in the dust. Customers flocked back in droves, drawn by the superior performance and Michael's reputation for integrity. Envirotech fought back with a flurry of lawsuits and negative ad campaigns, but it was too little, too late. Michael had won. A new era. As the dust settled, Michael took stock of how far he had come. From a small startup to a major player, his company had defied the odds at every turn. And he hadn't done it alone. He had built a team of loyal, dedicated people who shared his vision. Even John, his former adversary, had proven himself a valuable ally. Together, they had faced down challenges that would have broken lesser companies, passing the torch. But Michael knew that every journey must someday come to an end. He had poured his heart and soul into the company, and it was time for a new chapter. He announced that he would be stepping down as CEO, passing the torch to a new generation of leaders. At his farewell party, surrounded by tearful colleagues, Michael reflected on the incredible ride. He had built something lasting, something that would endure long after he was gone. Epilogue: a new adventure. As he walked out of the office for the last time, Michael felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had given everything to his company, and it had given him back more than he ever could have imagined. But he knew his story wasn't over. With a smile, he looked out at the horizon, ready for a new adventure. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them the same way he always had, with integrity, determination, and an unshakable faith in the power of the human spirit. Here, months had passed since Michael stepped down as CEO, and he was enjoying his newfound freedom. On a sunny afternoon, he decided to take a walk in the park near his home. Lost in thought, he hardly noticed the young woman who accidentally bumped into him. She apologized profusely, introducing herself as Sarah. As they chatted, Michael learned that Sarah was an aspiring entrepreneur with a brilliant idea, but no idea how to bring it to life. The mentorship. Intrigued by Sarah's passion, Michael offered to mentor her. They began meeting regularly, discussing her business plan and strategizing over coffee. Michael shared the lessons he had learned over the years: the importance of integrity, hard work, and surrounding yourself with good people. Sarah soaked up his advice like a sponge, and her idea began to take shape: the startup. With Michael's guidance, Sarah launched her startup. It was a mobile app that connected volunteers with local charities, making it easy for people to give back to their communities. The app was an instant hit, attracting thousands of users in the first month. Sarah was thrilled, but she knew she had a long road ahead. She turned to Michael for help navigating the challenges of growth. The investor. As Sarah's company began to scale, she needed more capital to keep up with demand. Michael introduced her to some of his former investors, including John Smith. John was impressed by Sarah's vision and agreed to lead a funding round. With the new investment, Sarah was able to hire a team and expand her reach. But with growth came new pressures, and Sarah began to feel the weight of leadership. The crisis. Just as things were looking up, disaster struck. A major security breach exposed the personal data of thousands of Sarah's users. The media pounced, painting the company as irresponsible and untrustworthy. Sarah was devastated, unsure how to respond. She turned to Michael for help, and he sprang into action. Together, they crafted a plan to address the breach head-on, apologize to users, and put stronger safeguards in place. The comeback. With Michael's steady hand guiding the ship, Sarah's company weathered the storm. They worked tirelessly to rebuild trust with their users, and slowly but surely, the app began to regain its footing. Sarah learned a valuable lesson about the importance of transparency and accountability, even in the face of adversity. She emerged from the crisis stronger and more determined than ever. The acquisition. As Sarah's company continued to grow, it began to attract the attention of larger players in the tech industry. One day, she received an offer from a major social media platform to acquire her app for an astonishing sum. Sarah was torn. The money would allow her to scale her impact, but she worried about losing control of her vision. She turned to Michael and John for advice. The decision. After much soul-searching, Sarah decided to accept the acquisition offer. She knew that with the resources of a larger company behind her, she could take her mission to new heights. At the signing ceremony, surrounded by her team and her mentors, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. She knew she never could have done it alone. Epilogue. Full circle. Years later, Sarah had become a successful executive at the social media company, overseeing a philanthropic initiative that had impacted millions of lives. One day, she received an unexpected email from a young man named David. He was an aspiring entrepreneur with a big idea, seeking guidance and mentorship. Sarah smiled, remembering her own journey and the people who had believed in her along the way. Without hesitation, she invited David to meet for coffee. As they sat down together, Sarah felt a sense of déjà vu wash over her. She listened intently as David shared his vision, offering advice and encouragement. She knew that this was just the beginning of another incredible story, one that would be told for generations to come. And so the cycle continued, with each new entrepreneur standing on the shoulders of giants, reaching for a better world. A decade had passed since Michael and John's fateful partnership, and life had taken them in different directions. But when Michael received an invitation to a reunion event for Acme Corporation alumni, he knew he had to attend. As he walked into the venue, memories came flooding back, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. And there, across the room, stood John Smith. The catch-up. The two men embraced, marveling at the passage of time. Over drinks, they caught up on each other's lives. John had retired from the business world and was now focusing on philanthropy, using his wealth to make a difference in the lives of others. Michael shared stories of his mentees, including Sarah, who had gone on to achieve incredible things. They reminisced about the past, the lessons they had learned, and the friendship they had forged through adversity. The legacy. As the evening wore on, Michael and John were approached by a young man named Alex. He introduced himself as a rising star at Acme, someone who had been inspired by their story. Alex shared his own vision for the future of the company, one that would build on the foundation of integrity and innovation that Michael and John had laid. The two men were moved by Alex's passion and offered their support and guidance. The challenge. But even as they celebrated the past and looked to the future, a new challenge was brewing. Acme Corporation had recently come under fire for a series of ethical lapses, including allegations of insider trading and environmental violations. The company's reputation was in tatters, and many were calling for a complete overhaul of its leadership. Alex turned to Michael and John for advice, knowing that they had faced their own share of crises. The plan. Together, the three men hatched a plan to turn things around. They would launch a comprehensive audit of Acme's practices, rooting out any wrongdoing and putting stronger safeguards in place. They would also embark on a major rebranding effort, emphasizing the company's commitment to integrity and sustainability. It would be a long road, but they knew that with hard work and determination, Acme could emerge stronger than ever. The setback. But just as they were about to put their plan into action, tragedy struck. John suffered a massive heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. Michael and Alex spent long hours by his bedside, praying for a miracle. When John finally regained consciousness, he was a changed man. He knew that he had been given a second chance at life, and he was determined to make the most of it. The revelation. In the weeks that followed, John made a startling announcement. He had decided to leave his entire fortune to charity, giving back to the communities that had supported him throughout his life. He also asked Michael to take over his role at Acme, guiding the company through its transformation. Michael was humbled by the request, but he knew that he could not refuse. With Alex by his side, he set out to build a new legacy for Acme Corporation. Epilogue. The future. Years later, Acme Corporation had become a model of corporate responsibility, known for its commitment to ethics, sustainability, and social impact. Michael and Alex had led the company through its darkest days and emerged stronger than ever. And though John had passed away, his legacy lived on through the countless lives he had touched. As Michael sat in his office, reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the friendships he had made, the lessons he had learned, and the opportunity to make a difference in the world. He knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he also knew that he would face them with the same determination and integrity that had guided him throughout his life. And so, with a smile on his face and a spring in his step, Michael set out to write the next chapter of his incredible story. A story of hope, redemption, and the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest of odds. One morning, as Michael sat in his office at Acme Corporation, he received an unexpected email. It was from Sarah, his former mentee who had gone on to achieve great things in the tech industry. She was reaching out to invite him to speak at a conference on ethical leadership, sharing his story and the lessons he had learned along the way. Michael was honored by the request and immediately accepted. The conference. As he stepped onto the stage at the conference, Michael was greeted by a sea of eager faces. He began to share his story, from his early days as a young entrepreneur to his tumultuous partnership with John Smith. He spoke of the challenges they had faced, the mistakes they had made, and the redemption they had found through hard work and integrity. The audience hung on his every word, inspired by his message of hope and perseverance. The revelation. But as Michael neared the end of his speech, he realized that there was one part of the story he had never told. It was a secret he had carried with him for years, one that had haunted him even as he achieved success. With a heavy heart, he revealed to the audience that in the early days of his career, he had once cut corners to get ahead. He had made a decision that went against his values and had nearly cost him everything. The lesson. As the room fell silent, Michael explained that this experience had taught him the true cost of compromising one's integrity. He had learned that success without honor was no success at all, and that the only way to truly win was to do so with dignity and respect. He urged the audience to always stay true to their values, no matter the cost. It was a powerful message, one that resonated with everyone in the room. The reunion. After the speech, Michael was approached by a familiar face in the crowd. It was Alex, his old friend from Acme Corporation. The two men embraced, marveling at how far they had come. Alex shared that he had recently taken over as CEO of Acme, and that he was working to build on the legacy of integrity that Michael and John had established. Michael was thrilled to hear it, knowing that the company was in good hands. The reflection. As Michael flew home from the conference, he reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. He thought back to all the people who had shaped his life, his family, his friends, his mentors, and even his rivals. Each one had played a role in making him the man he was today, and he was grateful for every single one of them. The legacy. In the years that followed, Michael continued to be a voice for ethical leadership in the business world. He wrote books, gave speeches, and mentored countless young entrepreneurs. And though he faced many challenges along the way, he never lost sight of the values that had guided him throughout his life. He knew that his legacy would not be measured in dollars and cents, but in the lives he had touched and the difference he had made. Epilogue. The farewell. And so, as Michael sat in his rocking chair on the porch of his home, surrounded by his loved ones, he knew that he had lived a life well lived. He had faced adversity with courage, fought for what he believed in, and left the world a better place than he had found it. And though his story was coming to an end, he knew that his legacy would live on through the countless lives he had inspired. With a contented smile, Michael closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. And as he did, he knew that he had achieved something far greater than success or wealth or power. He had achieved a life of purpose, a life of meaning, a life that would be remembered long after he was gone. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all.